Welcome to Love Talk, where we bring guests to share their knowledge, opinions, and experiences in the five love languages. I'm your host, Elijah Pestana, and joining us today is Eileen Grove, a clinical psychotherapist. Thank you for joining us today, Eileen.
Thank you for having me.
So, Eileen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Eileen Grove. I am a licensed clinical social worker specializing in psychotherapy. I see all types of clients, but I include couples.
In regards of you as being a professional, for those listeners who don't know what love languages are, could you be able to briefly describe what each love language is and what they do?
So there is 5 love languages: words of affirmation, compliments, or words of encouragement. It's me telling you, I appreciate you, I love you, I care for you, you're terrific, I know you can do this, verbal support. There's quality time, okay? And quality time is undivided attention. Quality time isn't just you're sitting in the room and you're reading a book and I'm doing a video game. Okay, quality time is taking a walk together, sharing an experience together, going to dinner together, something that the two of you do with each other to have the same shared experience. Receiving gifts, symbols of love like flowers or chocolate. You don't love me, you never bring me flowers. You don't love me because you never buy me anything. Some people, that's the only way they ever learned that love was. Acts of service in a familial or relationship couple setting could be, you help me set the table, you help me cook dinner, you take the dog for a walk because I'm busy, you help me do small jobs around the house. It's not all left like this is your jobs and this is my job kind of thing, or this is all you. Oh, I see you're really tired tonight, dear. Do you want me to empty the dishwasher for you? That's an act of service. And then, of course, the last one, physical touch. But it's not just having sex.
Okay.
Most acts of physical touch in a love language are really holding hands, a kissing, a touch on the shoulder, touch on the arm around the other person. Some type of physical touch doesn't always accumulate to end up in the bedroom, but it's just being demonstrative, being touched.
Do you actively use love languages in your couples counseling?
Love Languages by Gary Chapman was the gentleman that created and developed Love Languages. It's a very important part of communication within couples or any type of familial interaction.
And do you actively use that within your couples counseling?
Yes, I do.
How do you incorporate that specifically? Is it like infographics? Do you give like information towards love languages? Is there like a test that you give to your clients to see?
What I do is I don't do the test.
Okay.
What I do is I introduce them, explain them, and ask each individual, in a perfect world, how would they like their partner or family member or friend to show them how they care?
So, in your experience, can love languages be used in both platonic and familial relationships?
Absolutely. Love languages is the language of the heart. Okay. So anytime your heart is involved in a relationship, whether it be romantic, familial, or even just friendships, close friendships, we all need to feel heard and appreciated. And that's what the love languages are about.
In counseling, are people familiar with love languages? If not, do you introduce them to it?
Well, I would say most people are not. Millennials are. They seem to bring it to me. But most people, I just introduce them as a concept of a therapeutic tool. Okay, Gary Chapman, who is the founder of Love Languages, came up with this theory because communication is not just verbal. Communication is what we say, do, how we say it, and what we do. It's a very important aspect. Any relationship needs to have good communication.
In regards of clients and people in general, what are the concerns often in terms of receiving and showing love?
Misunderstanding. If someone's love language is words of affirmation and compliments and verbal words, words of encouragement, and if I'm a person that is not very good with words, but I show you in other ways, I buy you a gift or I spend time with you, may not talk, but I'll spend time with you, or I do acts of service for you. I'm actually showing, I'm speaking volumes to you, but you have to understand that that's the way I show my love. If you're in a relationship and one person's waiting for the words, the other person's doing it in acts of service, that's a total miscommunication.
And Eileen, how should someone with a difficulty in expressing love languages communicate that with those closest to them?
Well, that's why people come to a therapist. Sometimes a third person or a mediator. Most of the time in couples counseling, the therapist just is really a mediator. I'm taking what I see one person saying and communicating it to the other person in the language that I think they understand. So it's very important to have either a communication where you can say, let's get on the same page and let's talk about this, let's understand this, or have a third party introduce it and explain just what that's all about. Once the love languages are explained, then it's up to the two individuals, and sometimes with the third party, a therapist, to work out a compromise of, okay, I hear you saying this, even though you don't set the table and you don't get up and do anything for me or help me in the house, but you're telling me that's how you show it, is you're telling me I like acts of service. So could we make a compromise that even though you like to tell me, show me by an act of service by doing X, Y, and Z?
Can one person's love language change over time?
Sure. Again, like I said, your love language is developed by your own upbringing, but our perspectives change as we go and grow. So we can grow into an understanding. Let's say I was the kind of person that only understood love by gifts or symbols of love, flowers and chocolates or whatever. And your love language is quality time. Okay. I can reap the benefits and feel the rewards, feel the love by spending quality time with you. And over time, that may be changed to what I come to like, oh, I like this. I like this better than getting a gift.
Before we let you go, I just wanted to ask if you wanted to add something or share something in regards of love languages to our listeners out there.
Yeah, I want to say that whatever your love language is, it's not wrong. There's no right or wrong. It's just who you are and where you came from. Every one of our own personalities and personas are created from where we came from. So it's important to share with your partner or friend just what makes you feel good. Okay. In a family, it's important to try to speak to each other about this doesn't do it, but this makes me feel better. Because when there is love, the other person will try to compromise and try to accommodate you the best they can.
Eileen, you as a professional, you probably have a bunch of resources that you can share with the community. How can people follow you and be able to reach out to you in regards of your work or love languages in general?
I am a member of several professional organizations, but the best place to find out about me would be I have a presence on psychologytoday.com where I have a complete bio, a little video, and my specialties and all the insurances I take.
And I'll be sure to recommend you because sometimes a lot of people need professionals like you to be able to understand our partners and friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer our questions. And this is Eileen Grove, a clinical psychotherapist, and you were listening to Love Talk. Thank you so much, Eileen.
Anytime. Thank you so much for inviting me on your little podcast.
What a great guest we have. I'm actually going to bring in the love crew right now. Here I have Jess, Kenya, and Alexa, and we're going to be focusing on a couple of things that she answered within love languages and give our little 2 cents on the topic. So overall, is there anything you wanted to talk about in regards of what Miss Grove said?
I really liked everything that she said. I feel like love language is something that people look at and they're like, oh, it's like very like relationship oriented. And I
Mhm.
think that honestly, that's very far from the truth. Like as she said, familial relationships and like platonic relationships, like how do you demonstrate to your parents that you love them even though you don't do the dishes every day? Like, like things like that I think are really um important. And like I think that they're really good to know. And I also really liked the one of the points that she made, which was that your love language like isn't wrong. Like,
Right,
that like
yeah.
none of the love languages that you have are necessarily wrong. They're just the way that you've been brought up to like feel and experience love. And like I think that's amazing because I feel like it's sometimes when there is that like level of like somebody has a different one than you, there's like
It's like a clash.
yeah, and it's like not just a clash also, but it's kind of like you don't want to feel like you're not expressing your love, like they don't feel your love and you're not feeling theirs. And it's like sometimes when you feel like you're not doing it the right way, like you feel like maybe you're just not being a good friend or a good daughter or a good sister or a good partner. So I think that to like kind of recognize that like they're just different and that like there's ways that you are able to kind of make them one and be able to communicate those things with each other. I think that that's really interesting, and I think it's something that I personally never thought about. And I love that she made that point. I feel like that was one of my favorite points of like the entire conversation with her, which is that like no, your love language isn't wrong. It's just different, and there's just ways of finding to communicate that with other people.
What did you want to say, Kenyon, from what you understood with psychotherapist?
Yeah, Jess pretty much nailed it. That's how I feel as well. One of the things that stood out to me, like Jess said, was that the biggest problem and like that can happen in familial, platonic, or just regular relationships is the misunderstanding, not knowing that you may have a different love language than somebody else. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that actually a lot of us deal with, especially in our families. We may feel like we're not enough or that like we just do things wrong. And I think that after listening to this conversation with Miss Grove, is that maybe you are enough. You just don't communicate the same way that somebody like in your family would or your partner would. You show acts of service, but they're expecting you to give them gifts, or maybe the other way around. And again, like I'm saying, it's not that you're not enough. It's just people communicate differently, and she really brought to light that that's probably the biggest misunderstanding and the biggest problem in any kind of relationship or communication.
Come on, Alexa. Vai, fala.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to understand that love languages like really ties into like how we communicate with each other, like with our families, our friends, and like people we're in relationships with. And if you're having trouble with those things, you just have to express either to your partner or to the person you're having trouble with, and you can always seek out help like um with a
Loving, yeah,
therapist.
with a professional,
Exactly,
with a
with a
professional.
professional. And people change, things change, like Miss Eileen has stated that your love language can change over time. It doesn't have to stay the same. And as you're with that person, you learn what their love language is, and like it can transform into their love language, or like a combination of what you like and what they like. Just to keep a healthy, balanced relationship, you have to always be communicating these things with each other. That's what I think.
So here's an interesting thing. Whoever wants to answer off of this, because the thing is that love is a very interesting topic overall, and we're actually looking at the different aspects of love languages within everything. Let's talk about love languages between different age groups, because we're working on various projects that talk about within love languages between younger couples and older couples. From what we've been looking at, what do you guys think has been that difference or change, Jessica?
I don't know. I think definitely like in older couples compared to younger couples, I feel like younger couples are much more aware of what love languages are and like, kind of like try to put it into their everyday life, especially like our generation in general, like not just couples, but also like people in general. But for example, for one of our projects, we're talking about like, younger couples compared to like an older couple. And like we see kind of the difference in like the way that like younger couples express and know about love languages and how they are able to kind of identify them and express them so clearly, while I feel like an older couple might not be able to do that because I feel like they in their time it wasn't as an important thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just wanting to add on to that, there's a lot of we see a lot of older couples nowadays that are together just to be together. They kind of like coexist, especially
Okay,
in the
yeah.
Hispanic culture. And I think that that's an example of how people's love languages can not like only be physical touch, even though
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that we think is the most common in Hispanic culture and usually in older couples. It could be just acts of service or words of affirmation, just knowing that you're there to support each other as you raise a family, even if the physical touch love kind isn't there anymore.
And one thing that's interesting, at least with people not knowing about love languages, with what Miss Eileen pointed out, is that physical touch is not only about sex. It's just about physical affection. So within our Latin American community and culture, everything's, from what we see in media is just, the touching, the word, the sensual appeal of love. But you can just, hold the person's hand and all that. And that's, I think, is also the difference between older and couples of today. Isn't that, Alexa?
Yeah, I do feel like, that is a concept that people like need to understand better. And it's actually funny because like you see with millennials, like we are expressing a lot more like a difference in sexuality, things like that. There are aromantics, asexual people that don't necessarily feel the need to show that physical affection. So it's also important for them to understand the different love languages and how they can show that person that they're in a relationship with or like um, their family or friends like how they love them without it having to be physical because a lot of people don't really feel physical
Affection.
affection
Yeah.
is like a form of love. They don't feel anything romantically, so they have to show it in other ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. What's interesting is that we can also take this within cultures as well. Like, for example, we're all Latin Americans, Hispanics from South Florida. We know that it's important for us to be able to show physical affection because it was something a part of our culture and our upbringing. But I know a lot of different cultures. Like you would know someone from within Asian Americans within their family. They were taught, to be able to take their distance, not that much physical embraces.
Yeah, and being in I'm learning about Asian studies and stuff
Okay,
like that.
yes.
So
Clarify
I
it. You got
actually
it.
know like basically like in Asian culture they're very like necessarily say the words like I love you or like I like you a lot. Like they hold it to like a certain degree like it's how we just toss around like I love you to a friend or like a family member like they don't
It's
really.
something sacred.
Yeah, exactly. It's something sacred and it's really like it's sad because a lot of kids don't really hear that I love you from their parents, especially in those Asian cultures and you can just tell like statistically like you can see that like a lot of people like the marriage rate is like going down, like the birth rate, everything is going down cuz like they care more about work than like actual like quality time, like relationships in general. Like they're just very focused people and driven people. So like they don't really have time for relationships if that makes sense.
I think, for example, like in Japan,
Yeah.
there's actual record of this right now. There is a birth decline within Japan because most
Yeah,
people are
exactly.
getting out of Japan, and there's
Mhm.
only the workforce is just old people. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that within Japanese culture, they only focus on you have the sensei or like the master, and then they
Mhm.
have the apprentice. That's usually how the relationship would go. And
Exactly.
within the respect, it's very distant. It's always a professional workplace. There's no familial, there's no loving aspect because
Mhm.
they only focus their culture around work, which is very interesting.
Mhm.
Well, for example, like I'm a Brazilian American, me and Lex are Brazilians. Nós falo
Yes.
português.
Correct. Sim.
What's cool about us is that everybody says, "Oh, Brazilians are so social acting, they're so loving, you're sharing and all that." And for us, it's just because we genuinely care. Like, for example, at a young age, my mother always taught me to always love, ask to see if the person needs help or anything. And I'll generally say, I don't know you, bro, but let me give you a high five. You're probably not going to see that in different cultures. But the thing is that those are the social norms that we're not used to. So probably love languages are experienced differently from different cultures. You think so, right?
Exactly, yeah. Like in Brazilian culture, like we usually greet with a kiss or like a kiss on the cheek. Like it's a lot of touching, a lot of like words of affirmation, things like that. And in Asian cultures, like they don't really like hug, they just bow, they refer to each other in those, like how you said, like the hierarchy and the formalities and stuff. It's so like strict there, and it's so like ingrained in their culture that they're just kind of like, it seems like they're cold and they're distant, but that it's just how they were like brought up. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about like like
Latin
Hispanic,
culture, Hispanic
Latin
cultures.
cultures.
Go, Jessica, go.
I mean, it's not as different as what you guys are saying in Brazil. Like I mean, my family's Colombian, and like it's kind of I just feel like the Latin norm is just kind of like to do the little kiss on the cheek or like say hi, like be more physical. Like I had once an experience where I was like up north in Florida, and I was like saying hi to one of my friends' friends that I was just meeting, and like I was like, "Oh, hi, it's so nice to meet you," and I like went to give her a hug, and she was like so confused.
Okay. What do you think about that, Kenya?
Like you guys said, it just depends on the culture where you're brought up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what we just have to do, everybody who lives on this planet, we just have to learn how to communicate and just be open about, what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to do, how we feel, and that should fix any type of miscommunication. If everybody's willing to communicate, then any kind of love, any form of love, any love language, they should be able to all coexist together.
Within the surveys that we're taking, do we know that if how many people, like, is there a particular love language that people are use a lot within our surveys or things that we've been taking? Because we've been sending surveys out to people and sharing what they think overall with love languages.
I believe that it is quality time or words of affirmation. And
Quality
then
time.
physical touch is like third, which surprised me actually.
Really?
Yeah,
Physical?
physical touch is but like I thought it would be first. That's what I'm saying.
Well, remember, we're like second or third generation Latin Americans and coming into
True.
American culture, so that's probably different from experiencing, we're probably preferring something else than that. Like, for example, I enjoy being with you guys in quality time because we're able to create content and podcast for an assignment. Well, for example, me being with my mom, hugging her is something that I would like to generally do, but they're probably answering the survey within, as within a general sense.
Mhm.
So, do you have
Definitely.
most of the stuff?
I want to ask you guys, like, why do you think that, like, in our survey, receiving gifts was like the least, like, of the five love languages that people voted for? Like, what do you think? Why do you think that is?
I personally think that receiving gifts gets like a bad rep, to be honest. I think that that specific love language, people think that it means like, oh, I need you to give me like Tiffany or like whatever. You know what I mean? Like something that like give me like expensive, like nice, big, like fancy gifts. You
And
know
I
what
don't
I mean?
got
And
that
I don't
money.
no, and I don't think that it's necessarily that that's what it is. And I think that there's a huge misconception for that. Like I don't know who would not like well, maybe that's me generalizing, I shouldn't say that, but, I know that a lot of people who enjoy getting flowers, even if it's, like, the smallest little flowers, like or gift giving, like, I bought my friend an Arizona iced tea that she loves, and she was so happy about it, you know what I mean? Like, little things like that, I feel like people there's a huge misconception of, like, there being, like, gift giving has to be this big fancy thing, and it's not, it's just kind of, like, showing somebody that you are thinking of them, and then you show that with, like, something physical, like a freaking like, like a flower or like chocolates or like whatever, but like I think that's why it's probably gotten such a like such a lower rating. I think that a lot because I had like even me, like when I first heard of love language, when I heard of gift giving, I'm like, damn, like that probably means like or like receiving gifts or giving gifts, like that probably means that like they look at it from more of a materialistic standpoint. Like I definitely did at one point, but then when you like learn about it more, you realize it's not materialistic. It's just kind of like giving somebody something little, like somebody can give me a piece of grass from outside and it was like, oh, it looked like the shape of your hair. I'd be like, oh, that's so nice. Thanks so much. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like little things like that where you're just kind of like, they're thinking of you. It doesn't have to be anything huge, materialistic, or like whatever. I think that's probably why.
I also think the problem with gift giving is because people only think about it towards, their significant other or like a family member, but not really for friends. Like, for example, I really like to give gifts to people. It's not like a thing that I do as like, my preferred love language. For me, it's like for serving quality time, acts of service. But I realize like I just buy like gifts for people every now and then. Say, hey, I got this for you, and people are thinking weird, like, bro, are you hitting on me? Like no homo, or like a girl's like, like stop. I don't know you that well. It's like, no, like for example, like I just want to say, hey, I just thought about you, within that, like every now and then I just give gifts.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's wonderful, and I also think that, like, a lot of the times we don't even realize it, but I read somewhere, and, like, don't quote me on this, but, like, I read somewhere that, people like to show love in the way that they like to receive it. So maybe, like, you like to
Mm.
give I'm not gonna tell you that what your love language is, but, like, I'm saying, like, maybe you like to give gifts and, like, maybe, like, think about, like, how would that make you feel, you
I
know
mean,
what I
if you
mean?
give me $1 million right now, that would be the best gift
I don't
ever.
have that type of money, I'm sorry. But yeah, I think that like people like to give love in the ways that they like to receive it. I feel like that's kind of like a good note as to see like what people would actually like in their own love languages and stuff like that. So yeah, or like a gift giving also like when you give a gift like it's not even just romantic like you just said it doesn't have to be like a romantic thing like I love giving gifts to my mom on like Mother's Day because she'll cry and then that just makes me like, "Oh, mom, you're so sweet." Like, like little things like that, like that are going to mean a lot especially for like a mother because she birthed you.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's pretty cool. Where do we get our love languages from? Any particular person, like for you? Like for me, it's gonna be my mom, and then I guess for my faith, like for me understanding, I have to be love to another, access her, things like that. But I learned that primarily from my mother as my caretaker. Where do you guys get, like where did you learn love languages? Not the definition of love languages, but the actual like emotion expression of love languages.
I
Yeah.
think that like just like Eileen said, it just depends on your upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me as a kid, I'm willing to admit I was materialistic as a kid. I was like I wanted gifts. That's what made me happy. That wasn't the only thing that mattered, but I knew that that's what I liked. I looked forward to Christmas, birthdays. I was spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, things happen. You experience things with your families, with the people around you. You wake up, you see the real world, and it's not about materialistic things.
Exactly.
Now it's about quality time for me. So I think it just depends on, just like Eileen said, what you're experiencing and how you were brought up. Anybody else want to?
Um, okay, so yeah, I agree. I mean, in my relationship with my family, it's they don't really know how to express love all that often, like especially with the words and things like that. But I think I learned the most like throughout oh my goodness. I through living, through my friends and the people that I've met along the way because like they showed me that love isn't just your family, it's the people that you encounter and like, they tend like people with people within your family can tell you otherwise that people will never love you the same way that they love you, but that's just not true because there's always someone out there for you that'll understand you in ways that they just can't. And yeah, that's my piece on that. I don't know.
There was a musical that I did, and they talked about, it's not, you have two types of families. There's a family that you're born with, and there's a family that you choose. So, there are people that we choose within our lives. We get accustomed to the love languages that we have with them, and we learn from them as this is an ongoing thing and experience. So,
Sorry to change the topic a bit here,
go.
but something that I did notice in the survey is that the majority of our responders were straight or heterosexual,
Hmm.
but the second most abundant in responders are bisexual people. And then also we had some, yes, bisexual, and then we also had different types of sexualities: queer, asexual,
Various
gay or
people, the
lesbian.
LGBT community,
Correct,
right? Yeah.
yes. But have any of you guys noticed, maybe you guys are friends or have people in your family that are part of the LGBTQ community? Have you noticed any patterns or anything in their love languages?
I mean, I am in a heterosexual relationship right now, but I am bisexual. I think, like in general, with queer people, like it's harder to not like but like how do I explain? How do I explain
I
this?
hope we break it down, Flo.
So like in public, like it is harder for us to express to each other, like or well, not me now, but like I think queer people in general like have a hard time expressing themselves like to their partners. Like I'm talking about partners
It's about
specifically.
public display of affection.
Yeah, public
Okay.
displays of affection,
PDA.
because within the community, it's not the norm.
It's not the social
The
norm that you
social
see
norm,
now. Okay.
exactly. So it's like now I feel like people are showing more like physical affection because this generation at least, like it is more normal than, the previous generations. But I do think they have like a harder time to express themselves. I don't want to speak on behalf of all bisexuals, but like at least, for me growing up bisexual, whenever I would have a crush on a girl, it was kind of like harder for me to express to her like that I had feelings for her, or like, show her like that I do like her. Just because like I was scared of, like what other people would think. So I think that definitely does play into um the factors of, queer people or bisexual people showing how they love their significant other in public, if that makes sense.
I mean, in the political sphere, within gay rights and relationships, that was recently amended within the Supreme Court, like almost a decade. So now you're seeing these things flourishing within these types of relationships. What's interesting about love languages, I think, it has to be taught in school overall, because if kids at a young age do not know what love languages is, it's going to be hard for them to express to their families, their friends, and even professionals like Miss Eileen. And that's what's cool about what she's doing, is because she's incorporating that to people who don't know. And like for me, just reading about it, it helps me open up and understand, how can I treat this person? What are their needs as a human being and as an individual? Because if I'm only thinking about myself, I should even be with that relationship with the friend, you know? I have to work on myself individually. Well, that's everybody here for the Love Talk. I'm your host, Elijah Pestana, and we had a wonderful Eileen Grove, psychotherapist, and we had Jess, Kenya, and Alexa. And hope you guys have a great day.